Hi everyone, and today I'm going to do some compare and contrast of the ISTP and the INFP. This was by request, and it's a very timely request because I had recently had an interaction with someone I believe is an ISTP that got me thinking about the type. This time around, I'm wearing a hat because my hair is a disaster, so bear with me hat-wise, but I wanted to thank the person who suggested this because it's an overdue idea to revisit. So the way we look similar, ISTPs and INFPs, we both start with an introverted judging function that's coupled with an extroverted perception function, TI versus FI, but from a distance or from an outside casual view, it can look similar. Because neither of us has got FE in any meaningful slot, it's kind of toward the bottom. And we're not, and similarly, TE is at the bottom for INFPs. There's a fairly flat affect. There's a fairly low-key vibe. You're just not going to get a lot out of this more aloof personality type until you find some way that they will resonate with you. Below that, things differ fairly dramatically between the two because we share no functions, which I should mention as a side note. I'm not going to do the ISTP justice, and I'm probably going to get some things quite wrong because I've seen how ISTPs regard INFPs, and from my perspective, they get a lot of things wrong about INFPs. Therefore, I suspect that my arm's length view of someone who shares no functions is going to be at least as bad and off base. But anyway, back to ISTP versus INFP. I have several ISTPs in my life. Until fairly recently, I thought that they were mostly the kind of Clint Eastwood style archetype that matched fairly well to the ISTP. They are direct in their communications. They say what they mean what they say, they speak when it's necessary, and they don't tend to have a lot of excess verbiage around things. That doesn't mean, though, as I've found out, that ISTPs are always kind of very low-key, speak very little. An ISTP can have, say, a 30-minute monologue and present the way that I do. It's just that they will be very straight and direct about what they're talking about. And an ISTP will talk about feelings, but in terms of their emotional states. And again, that will be a very direct thing. So you will have an ISTP who may talk about that a thing made them sad, or that they were happy about particular things, or what brought on a depression. But it's spoken in a way that feelings are emotions, they're not an evaluation mechanism. Now, compare and contrast that with the INFP. We are circuitous, very indirect and circumspect in the way that we come at topics. It's probably likely to irritate some ISTPs because we are much less likely to get to the point, or we talk around a point, and we talk around the point at many different possible angles without necessarily injecting what do we believe is the correct solution, the correct way to or what we believe is the right answer. It's more just here are possibilities and here are more possibilities, and that FI-NE combination presents lots of information without any real guidance as to what does this mean, what are you trying to say, what is the conclusion. It's just a bunch of ideas thrown together. So ISTPs and INFPs. One other thing, and this is an oddball that I only realized when I woke up this morning, came to me out of the blue, that the ISTPs that I know, all of them have had trouble with higher education. And that may just be a coincidence, but I think there's something to it. And that is, of the three ISTPs, two I very strongly expect are ISTPs, the third I'm relatively certain. One flunked out, then started his own business and has run multiple businesses and is doing kind of part-time work here and there and cobbling things together to live a fairly laid-back lifestyle. The second started off in IT. I went to university with this person. We graduated earlier, and then that person lost interest in the IT degree that that person was pursuing, and therefore ended up, I don't know if he flunked out or just quit university or got the degree, but he never did anything with the degree and instead went back to school a year or two later for photography and became a commercial photographer, which gets him out with multiple day trips to fulfill commercial contracts. And he is happy with that arrangement. It seems that he's found his place. And the third, I'm not sure if he has a degree or not. He has worked in retail a very long time and is happy in retail. Nowadays, fixing bicycles, building bikes, doing outdoor shop specialty stuff. And he'd considered being a career delivery driver for a while as well. So I think the connecting point between all of this is maybe the action orientation of an ISTP. Between that and the TI and SE, I can see where there's not a lot of patience to sit down and walk through the stuff that's necessary, the hoops that are necessary to jump through for higher education, where a professor doesn't necessarily give actionable information. You just spend a lot of time sitting there trying to absorb stuff. An ISTP is, countervalues SI. With TI, they already know a lot of the rationale that they can build internally. They're not looking to adopt external systems. So I think school just doesn't appeal as much to ISTPs, though I'm sure for those that do and those that find practical uses, they will use higher education very effectively to get to the particular goals that they have, that they want. Whereas, for me, an INFP, alleged INFP, I'm quite happy with 4 years of university just following through, jumping through the hoops, doing the things that I'm supposed to do, and then you get the grade, and it's all sort of this dance that one goes through of how the school year paces and how friendships evolve and how communities come together and dissolve again. And it was all very pleasant. So it was pleasant and it wasn't difficult. And that's where the university experience, I expect, is probably pretty appealing to INFPs. The suspect INFPs I know at least one had a doctorate. I would have gone back to university if I'd been given the chance, but it leads me to the next point. ISTPs being action types. Another thing I see is that they typically they have an instability in an approach to something. And the instability just meaning it's the place where they take action upon the world. And in one case, I've seen it with an STP and cars. They were buying a new car or swapping out cars every year or two because they were looking for that new experience with the automobile. I've seen it with with girlfriends, that they would just have perennial girlfriends, one after the other, lined up, that just, okay, this one was interesting, now let's, and then something unstable happens and they swap to something else. Two of the three ISTPs that I know have been married and divorced and remarried. So this is in contrast to the NFPs that I know, or the NFPs and NTPs that will mate for life given the option, because it's just It's like the relationship is just something that, okay, this is now set, and now I can go back to my imaginary world, or the alternative universe in which things happen that interest me more, and the relationship is a tether that keeps one connected to the real world in some stable way, and let's maintain that stability. So it's similar with, with cars, with other things. There's sort of this, you could call it nostalgia with the child SI of INTPs and INFPs, but whatever the reason, it's much more like you get a car, you just hold on to it for 10 years because it's effort and energy to reevaluate and reassess and make a new purchase. And gosh, all that just sounds like too much to invest in a thing that is not in the plane of ideas in which I'd like to focus. So again, I think this kind of gives an idea of where ISTPs and INFPs will differ. The practicality of the ISTP is just, well, it's enviable. It's very different from the INFP. Impracticality and inefficiency. So to come about with some final thoughts, there's kind of 3 categories into which I can put ISTPs. ISTPs that I've known personally are great. They're really low key. We make good activity partners. That is, they're the good activity partner. I am not especially good in that field, but I contribute what I can. And it more or less works. I think they see that I'm putting in sincere effort, and they maybe feel good about, I don't know if they feel good about it at all or not, but they may have some interest in that they are more efficient or more capable than I am at the tasks at hand. So ISTPs are just low-key, easy to get along with. I would describe the relationship between ISTPs and INFPs as relatively inert. There's just not a whole lot of connection there, so we just sort of are in our own worlds, and it's like sup, and that's, it's not much more exciting than that. However, there are, in MBTI communities, I've observed some ISTPs who believe they're INFJs, and I have made missteps when I think this is someone who leads with NI and FE, that I can approach them in a particular way that would be of interest to INFJs. If someone types themselves upside down, that's kind of a recipe for bad things to happen, because it's somebody who is trying to squeeze the way that they work out of their child and infant functions. So that's already, you're off to a bad start. And then they will pull back into their 2 top functions in order to execute on stuff. So someone with 3rd slot NI is treating it like 1st slot NI. They're relying on a childlike ability and treating it as if it is the adult in the room. That's bad. If you can imagine, that's bad. And then when I've come in with an FI sensitivity, that is, TI is very sensitive to accuracy. FI is very sensitive to kind of incongruency. That is, I won't get into it, but let's say that an ISTP that believes they're an INFJ is going to kind of combine the worst of both worlds, because they're led by their child functions, but then when the child functions are getting it wrong, they bring in the adults in the room to, for lack of a better term, give a beating as to, why, like, how dare you do this particular thing? And then it's like, it's the SE 2nd slot, and then things devolve quickly because we share no functions. So I have had run-ins with ISTPs and STPs in general who believe they're INFJs, and it is my fault that I should know to be more careful when someone says that they're an INFJ, whether or not they may be a different type, and I should address it with caution as opposed to thinking that we are going to connect at a fundamental level, despite our differences in that kind of curious way that INFPs and INFJs connect. Then there's the ISTP who believes they're an INFP. There's also ISTPs that believe they're INTPs, but that's a little too far off the reservation, so I'm not going to address that. But the ISTP who believes they're an INFP is very interesting. They make a really good INFP because they can be very direct and therefore sound very authentic, be very authentic, but also they have the ability to talk through, they have the logic needed to express themselves clearly, plus the ability to drag in that feelings function to discuss on an emotional level about their feelings. So they can sound very kind of what people imagine INFPs to sound like. Whereas I come in, I think I hardly talk about feelings because feelings are sort of, emotions are something to be, are kind of a tool to be used as opposed to something that has a lot of great interest about being happy and sad. I have mentioned it at times in videos about things that produce different emotions, but it's not my primary way of interfacing with the concept of feelings. The primary way is this, what I present here. Looking at and examining different nuances, trying to feel out how they sort out, and then presenting them as a possibility. So, and that, is probably to most people not going to be very interesting because, again, is there a point here, or is he just talking in circles or being circumspect about what is really meant? So I think that's most of what I wanted to talk through about INFPs and ISTPs. They're a good type. We just don't tend to connect on a very easy level because we are under the covers so fundamentally different, even if superficially we may seem to be somewhat similar. I think that's, again, about all. So please let me know if you have any questions. Let me know where I got things wrong, because, again, I do not know ISTPs well. I'm making a lot of presumptions here. I'm making what observations I can that I think are empirical, but the spin I may have put on could be entirely incorrect. I do know they're a good type, so I don't want to misrepresent them, and if I have, then I apologize for that. But anyway, enough of that. Time for your thoughts. Thanks again for listening, for watching, and bye for now.